Hey, Papa. I had some stuff that I wanted to add even to the GH and the GH3 and the GH3 Plus videos because I keep thinking of stuff that I should have told you. And but before I do that, I want to say I hope you were having a great day and a great life. One of the reasons that I talk about minimalism and geology, and I'll be talking about trees in upcoming videos, is that I want to help everyone who watches these videos have a better, more fulfilled, more enriched life. And that is what it's all about. That's more important. Your life and my life, for us to live well and live happy, is much more important than geology and much more important than minimalism. So here's Papa wishing you a happy day, happy life. And I'll think about you guys often. So anyway, we talked about the how after rifting happens, the continent pieces sink and the ocean rises, and you get a layer of sand beaches, and that gets covered by a layer of mud, and then that gets covered by a layer of limey mud, which becomes limestone. And that's called the rift-to-drift process, rift-to-drift sequence. Well, just to really bring home the idea that this happened all over the United States. Virtually the entire continent was covered by these warm, shallow seas, except what they call the transcontinental arch, and that's an area of a topographic high. It was an area of islands that runs from about Minnesota down to New Mexico. That's about the only part of the North America or the United States that did not get covered by this sea transgression. They call this transgression the Sauk transgression, or the Sauk Sea, S-A-U-K. So you can look that up and learn more about it. Anyway, just to let you know that this was all over the place, I'm going to tell you the names of, I told you about Chilhowie Mountain being the sandstone layer that goes from Georgia all the way up through Virginia and probably into Pennsylvania and New York, actually. It's probably called something different. And then I told you about the Flathead sandstone out in Bighorn Mountains of Wyoming. I want to tell you some other names for the same beach sand layer in other parts of the country, and you're going to be able to tell by what my eyes do that I've got this all memorized. So in New York State, it's called the Potsdam sandstone. And if you don't care, then you can say, I don't give a Potsdam. Okay, wait a minute. In Virginia, this same layer is called the Irwin/Antietam quartzite. Quartzite is metamorphosed sandstone, and of course sandstone is just sand that's turned into a rock. In Pennsylvania, it's called the Antietam quartzite. In Colorado, it's called the Sawatch quartzite. In Nevada, it's called the Sterling quartzite in some places. In some places, it's called the Prospect Mountain quartzite. If you go to, the Great Basin National Park in east central Nevada, those Cambrian layers, sand, mud, and limestone are well exposed, and they're the major features of that national park. And they call the beach layer there the Prospect Mountain sandstone, or maybe quartzite. And anyway, the shell layer on top of that at Great Basin National Park is called the Pioche shell, I think it is. And then there's a layer of limestone on top of that, which I can't remember the name of it at Great Basin, but there are caves. There is a cave system in it. And that's one of the features of Great Basin National Park. You can get tickets and tour that cave. In other places in Nevada, it's called the Tintic quartzite. So this layer of quartzite has sandstone/quartzite. It has all kind of names, but depending on where it was first identified, but it's all the same layer. I also talked about when Rodinia rifted, there are these lava flow areas that were associated with the rifting all up and down the East Coast. And I talked about the Catoctin Formation in Virginia, which is those ancient basalt and rhyolite lava flows associated with the rifting of Rodinia. Well, there's a place up there called Stony Man Mountain that you may be familiar with. That is the Catoctin Formation there. So if you ever go to Virginia, I think it's near Shenandoah National Park, go check out Stony Man. What else did I want to say? Oh yeah, one more cool thing. If you go to Warm Springs, Georgia, you know where President FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt went and soaked in those warm springs for his polio emaciated body. You see Pine Mountain, which is, and the warm springs are at the base of Pine Mountain. Well, Pine Mountain is mainly made of sandstone. And that sandstone, believe it or not, it is the sand beaches of the Cambrian Rift-to-Drift process. Now they call it, I forget that the Cochrane, maybe they call it the Cochrane sandstone, but I can't remember exactly what they call it. Maybe they call it the Pine Mountain sandstone. But what happened was, after that sand layer was laid down, when Africa crashed, it shoved that whole area around Warm Springs wacky. It broke the sandstone layer up and pushed it up on its side and then covered it all over. But millions of years later, everything eroded off of it. And but because the sandstone was hard and erosion resistant, it stayed there. And they call that a geologic window, where you've got layers of sediments that go across the land, but in one spot, those layers of sediments are eroded away and you can see what's down underneath, and that's called a geologic window. Well, in Pine Mountain, it is a geologic window, and that Pine Mountain sandstone, which is the Cambrian sandstone, is exposed. Well, what happened is because it was cracked, when it got smacked by Africa, it was cracked and turned on its edge. Well, what happened is when it rains, water hits the top of the mountain and goes down, maybe 3,000 feet down underground, where it's much warmer down there. And as additional rain comes on top of it, the warmed water gets pushed back up and pops out on at the base of the mountain as these warm springs. So isn't that cool? You should go to Warm Springs and check it out. Unfortunately, you and I cannot get into the warm spring anymore. They've got it fixed where we can't go in there. What else I want to do? Oh, I told you about the Cambrian explosion of life. All the conditions were just perfect for life in the warm, shallow sea to proliferate. Where sunlight reached down to it, but also something that had been missing before was there, and that's oxygen in the water. Our early what am I trying to say? Oh, our early atmosphere on Earth didn't have much oxygen in it at all. And so plants as we know them couldn't grow. Down in the bottoms of the ocean, all these sulfur-eating bacteria could thrive, but out in the seas and on the land, nothing could live that needed oxygen. But what happened was that slowly but surely, back in Precambrian times, that's before Cambrian, before 550 million years ago, these blue-green algae mats began to form in the oceans, all over the oceans, in the shallow water. And they took in carbon dioxide from that carbon dioxide-rich atmosphere, and guess what they spit out, so to speak, as their byproduct of this metabolism of carbon dioxide. Same thing that trees do. They take in carbon dioxide and they use it to build their bodies, and they spit out oxygen. So for millions of years in Precambrian time, all these blue-green algae mats everywhere were producing oxygen in the water, filling the oceans up with oxygen. And there was tremendous amount of iron dissolved in the water, because iron had been just flowing off this land that had no plants on it every time it rained and stormed, and the oceans were full of this dissolved iron. Well, when all this oxygen came into the water from these blue-green algae, the iron that was in the water got oxidized, combined with the oxygen, and it dropped down to the bottom of the ocean and formed these humongous banded iron formations. And you should look up banded iron on Google and find out more about it. But that's where we get most of our iron ore that's used to make all the things that we make out of metal, out of steel and iron. So oxygen, by Cambrian time, there was plenty of oxygen in the water thanks to these these blue-green algae mats. And the blue-green algae mats became fossilized into what is called a stromatolite. And if you go to the right place, one place you can see them in the Tetons National Park. If you go on the west side of the Tetons, you can see them in Tennessee near Knoxville at the IAMS Nature Center parking lot. They've got some stromatolites there. You can see them at the Grand Canyon South Rim. They've got some rock samples that you can look at there along the trail on the edge of the canyon, so you can see them there. So I wanted to tell you about that. And the last thing I want to tell you is about this cool layer of limestone that covered the entire United States just about. Limestone creates extremely fertile soils, and that has been a tremendous asset and benefit in the development of agriculture and the development of our country. So the Great Valley, which runs all the way from Alabama up to through Pennsylvania, has been primitive man lived there and hunted there because the calcium-rich soils enable great game animals to grow and survive, because the grass and the vegetation that they ate was enriched with this limestone. Anyway, next time we will talk about something different, and I just wanted to say, you guys have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. Papa out.